The views expressed on this podcast are ours alone and do not reflect the views of our employers.
Evolution of Evil.
I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep. That's when they would be strangled.
Do you have a boyfriend?
No.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Evil is not spurned. Evil is thought of as a spirit that needs help.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
Evolution of Evil.
Hello, true crime family, and welcome to this dysfunctional relationship that we call Evolution of Evil, where myself and Justin, that's him over there, we relive some of the more awful and horrific crimes while also diving into the human psyche that makes these crimes even a possibility. Please remember to subscribe and rate this show wherever you get your podcast. Follow the show on Twitter at Evolution of EVI2, as well as our personal accounts. He is at Justin Yent. I am at TC was 91. Justin, how the hell are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I've how old am I? 38. I've decided at 38 that we were just talking about this before we started. I got a lot of things going on. And I haven't had motivation, and this is not a joke. I have not had motivation to do much for several months, and I owned a lot of that to the fact that I'm staring 40 dead in the face. And just was happy about just being an overweight 38-year-old. And then I don't know. It was over the last few weeks. I really wanted to make a change for the better. So with the help of Nick Aldis and Legacy Supplements, I've ordered some supplements from his company and just started the regimen last night. Some sleeping medications and then not medications, are the right word, sleeping supplements, and then took a pre-workout today. Hopped on the Peloton for 40 minutes, did some stretches. Doing this, I'm cooking some chicken breasts on the Blackstone after this with some whole grain rice, and that's gonna be my lunch and my dinner. And just trying to better ourselves, because especially with the world being as depressing and spiraling out of control seemingly as it appears to be. Although I will say normalcy has taken a lot of strides forward lately in some areas, but quite a few steps back in others. And people are yelling at me. I'm talking too much, but we need to work on bettering ourselves. So today I made a promise to myself to start working on myself, and I'm going to update you guys while I do it. So today I weighed in at 227 pounds, and I'm 5'10". So just ordered a new scale. So as we progress through the show, through the upcoming weeks, I will update you on my progress. And I think this is something we should do together. And you actually yourself, you got a good burn on in the gym this morning before we started.
Yeah, I am down 30 pounds since February. So I am on this journey with you. And as someone who is crossed over 40, I can tell you it's safe. There are others that have done it, and the water is warm. So
that's just from Pete, though.
Well, dip your toe in the water. But I am sure they are going to be interested to follow that journey with us. And as they tune in weekly,
yes,
they can hear our updates on that.
We're gonna lift you up, and then we're gonna drag you through the mud with the stories that we tell.
Yeah, and I think they got a bonus episode on Tuesday from you, and it was great.
Well, it wasn't even a bonus episode. It was just the episode I was supposed to do on Saturday.
Well, it was We Owed You One, I guess,
yeah.
is the best.
It was our IOU.
Exactly. But really, we're glad to hear that you're feeling better today, and finally getting back on the mend. So
Also drinking water, not drinking Diet Pepsi today.
that's awesome. Well, we've got an exciting episode today. So
We do.
I don't know if it's exciting. It's definitely depressing, but it's definitely one of our lesser known serial killers that I've not heard about before. So it was interesting doing some research.
And we talked about this too before we started, because I read the notes for this today. Actually, I was on the Peloton, and it's so recent. It's so organized to the point of almost maniacal. Well, it is maniacal, and so unique. But somehow neither one of us have heard of this guy, which I'm going to attribute it to his home state. And I'm not going to throw the cat out of the bag just yet, but yeah, this one, I don't really understand how he was under the radar.
Yeah. This guy is special. I will say that.
That's a word for it.
Well, TJ, today we're going to take a trip into the twisted world of serial killer Israel Keyes, who terrorized the United States for more than a decade. Keyes was smart and able to stay out of sight. Israel Keyes may not be as well known as serial killers like Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, but this chilling story and unusual way of killing have had a long effect on the field of criminal investigations. Keyes was a master of both planning and carrying out his plans. He left nothing out in his search for the perfect crime. He didn't get caught for years because he paid close attention to every detail and chose random people to hurt. Before we start, I want to give you a trigger warning. So this is two shows in a row that we're giving trigger warnings.
For different reasons, too. That's what's horrifying.
This show will talk about sensitive and graphic topics that may not be right for everyone. We will talk about violent crimes like murder and sexual assault and try to figure out what goes through the mind of a cold-blooded killer. Listeners should use their own judgment. In this episode, we'll look at Israel Keyes' life from his secluded and extremist childhood to his time in the military, which some people think may have helped him become a criminal. We'll also look more closely at his way of doing things, like how he used kill kits, which were caches of tools and guns that he buried in strategic places and then used to kill people. Keyes was also known for being able to fit in with society. He lived a pretty normal life in Alaska while committing crimes all over the United States. We'll look into some of the most terrible things that have been blamed on Israel Keyes, like the kidnapping and killing of Samantha King and the Couriers. These cases show how brutal and planned Keyes' crimes were, and they are a stark warning that danger can be hiding under the surface of people who pretty much seem harmless. As we look into how Keyes was caught, why he confessed, and why he killed himself while in jail, we will have to deal with the unfinished puzzle he left behind. There are still a lot of open questions about how bad his crimes were and who else may have been hurt by him. We'll also hear from people. We'll dive deeper into a lot of the criminal psychology and profiling. So TJ, let's start where I usually like to start, at the very beginning, which I'm told it's usually a very good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Let's learn about his youth. So on January 7th, 1978, Israel Keyes was born in Cove, Utah, to a big Mormon family. He was the second of 10 children, and during his early years, he was taught to be very religious and lived alone. His family lived off the grid and didn't have electricity or running water. They also homeschooled their kids in a setting that was very conservative and extreme. People think that his upbringing made Keyes more likely to turn to crime later in life.
So this part, there is one thing I'm curious about. And this is also this paragraph is a great example of how words become perverted when they really shouldn't be. Conservative in the frame of you put it. As soon as you hear that word, everyone knows what thoughts go through your head. A stereotype, one way or the other, right? Really conservative just means in this instance, not a lot of flair. Probably not. I bet you they didn't have a TV in their house. Not a lot of radio. Probably didn't do that much. very to the book, very strict. That's what conservative in this instance means.
Yeah, and I think the definition changed from 1978 to
Sure.
2023, right? Now we're thinking of more the political aspect, right?
And also what I'm curious, because this is an interesting topic because I did a Murder Among the Mormons episode 5 or whatever it was. I don't remember anymore, but the Mormon part of this is curious to me, because I wonder, because the Mormon religion mainstream has kind of steered away from multiple wives and things like that. They kind of just left that part behind. But there is a group of Mormons, and I wish I can remember what they call themselves, but I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a documentary on it. I've watched it, and it's fascinating. Keep Sweet and Obey, I believe it's what it's called. And that chapter, I mean, they don't just still do multiple wives. That's all they're about. So I wonder if he is in the more mainstream version of Mormonism now, or if his parents were in one of these offshoots where the political views, because that would also, I said political views, that wasn't the right term, but because that would also explain why it was so extreme, regimented, not a lot of outside influence, because that would explain that too. So I'm curious about that part. I would like to know that.
Well, I'm glad that you asked.
Oh.
So during Key's childhood, his family moved to Colville, Washington, where they actually joined the Christian Identity movement. It was actually a conservative religious group. This group spread ideas about white nationalism and being against the government, which further cut the family off from the rest of society. Israel and his brothers grew up in a tough place that taught them to be independent and wary of the outside world. So kind of gives you your answer right there.
I know absolutely nothing of the Christian Identity movement.
That could definitely be an episode that we cover going further.
That is a new one. Now, again, it is really unfortunate that these groups use names like Christian Identity to call themselves, because as soon as you say spreads ideas of white nationalism and being anti-government, nothing is Christian about that.
Right.
You're just using the word to further your own agenda and make it seem like a higher power is guiding you when it isn't. And that's what I don't like about. I mean, among other things, also obviously, but I don't keep this a secret. I'm not a very religious person, but when I see things like this, I feel terrible for my friends and family that are, because they get a bad name for something they have no control over.
Well, it goes back to, I think we've said it in several episodes, whether it's an occupation or group, right? There's good and bad. Mm-hmm. And so, ultimately it leads to that. And unfortunately the bad ones are what give
everyone remembers
the stereotype, and yeah, it's what everybody remembers. So
like, even we don't know anything about the church down the street from me, but everyone remembers Waco.
Right. Yep. TJ, even though Kias felt like he grew up alone, he got in trouble very early on. He liked breaking into homes and taking, but it seemed like he did these things more to get a thrill than to get money. As he got older, his bad behavior got only worse. If it didn't, we wouldn't be covering him today.
Right.
And he started to act in ways that were not good for society. He admitted to beating and killing animals, which is a sign that serial killers are likely to hurt people in the future. He was also interested in the strange and scary, and often went to remote graveyards at night.
See, now he's affecting us, because we're interested in the strange and scary, but we're not beating animals. So again, you're putting us in a bad light here, sir.
Yeah, I think...
Although I'm not going to graveyards at night.
I think when you look at it, he was interested in the strange and scary for different reasons than what we are. Right? And so we're looking to investigate why people do what we do. I mean, if not, I wouldn't have gotten a criminology degree.
So we're interested in the why.
Yeah.
He wants to know the how.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he wants to know.
So he did join the Army when he was 20 because he wanted to get away from his strict home and find a new path for his life, which I find funny as someone who's never been in the military. You would think you're jumping from the pan to the frying pan, right?
You would be surprised how often you would be surprised how often that is the case. You would be surprised by that.
It's crazy. From 1998 to 2001, he was in the military. He was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington, Fort Hood, Texas, and even served some time in Egypt. Kies was trained to be an infantryman while he was in the military and got a lot of awards and praise for his work. Even though there was no clear link between his time in the military and how he became a serial killer, some people think that the skills he learned during his time may have affected how he killed people. I think once you hear a little bit further, you will kind of understand this conversation that we're having right now.
Oh, I understand it already.
Yeah. So after Kies got out of the Army, he started to make a new life for himself. He had many different jobs before deciding to become a general builder. He actually started his own building company, Kies Construction, which gave him the freedom to move a lot for work. He went to Anchorage, Alaska in 2007.
That's why we haven't heard of him.
Yep. There he kept running his business and seemed to live a normal life. He had a girlfriend and a young daughter and seemed to be normal, hardworking guy from the outside. Seems like most of the serial killers are making sure that they have a second identity to help cover up, right? And he was no different.
Oh, yeah. Bundy, Jerry Brudos, John Wayne Gacy, Dennis Nielsen, down the line.
Exactly. But he was keeping a dark and dangerous secret behind this front. He began killing people the same year he moved to Alaska. He later said in a chilling confession that his criminal activities got worse in 2001, the same year he left the military. People think that his construction business was a perfect cover-up for his crimes because it gave him a chance to move a lot and stay out of sight. As soon as Kies started doing bad things, he came up with a unique and scary way to do things. He didn't have a specific type of target like many serial killers do, which made it hard for police to connect his crimes. Usually it's the same description, right? It was blonde hair, blue-eyed, female, or something like that.
So up until that point, you had described John Wayne Gacy.
Right.
Had his own construction business, did most of his killing at night. But then when you go into random victimology, that's Richard Ramirez.
Well, hold on to your seat, TJ, because I'm about to explain exactly why he is completely different. So he went after men, women, young people, old people. He chose his victims at random and followed them for days or weeks before moving. He planned and did everything very carefully, so there wasn't much for law enforcement to follow. It was almost like he was studying true crime as well to get away with the perfect murders. His early life and background set the stage for the scary story that would unfold over the next 10 years. His strict and extreme childhood, along with his early criminal behavior and fascination with violence, pointed to the darkness that would come to define him. So now that we've talked about his childhood, time in the Army, and even his early life as a criminal, let's talk about why he's on today's show. Like TJ says in his shows, giving you dates is probably not a good thing unless it's about someone's backstory.
Yeah, there's not a date we're going to give that's a good thing.
No. So, on February 1st, 2012, Samantha Keeming was 18 at the time. She was working as a barista at a neighborhood coffee stand during her night shift. A man, later identified as Kies, approached the stand with a gun and pushed Keeming to leave the stand and get into his car, which pretty much was parked nearby. He then took her to a nearby shed that he had rented for the sole purpose of kidnapping and killing her. He put shackles and other tools he would need for the crime in the shed, which were near his home in Anchorage. Once inside the shed, Kia is raped and then killed her by strangling her. Then he cut her body up and threw the pieces into a frozen lake in Anchorage. Now, here's what I want you to understand. I actually watched interviews with him.
Oh,
Yes. And this guy is absolutely insane when they're interviewing him. And I'll go more into the interviews a little bit later, but what he was pretty much saying was he had stalked her for a while. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. He knew exactly when she would be alone, what the night shift looked like, how easy it was for him to actually abduct her from the actual coffee shop. In addition to that, once he did kidnap her, he actually said, look, I'm going to hold you for ransom and request money from your family to get you back, which was a total lie because he killed her right after. So it's like a bait and switch with her, totally. Now, surveillance video caught the kidnapping. So it caught everything on there, but it wasn't found until after Kias was named a suspect in the case. So it was a very important piece of evidence in the investigation. Like I said before, he spent several days watching the coffee stand before he kidnapped her. Interestingly enough, Keeling's family got a note after she was taken and asked for $30,000 in exchange for her safe return. The note was written by hand and gave clear directions on how to pay the ransom. It told Keeling's family to put the money into a certain bank account and wait for more directions.
I tried to mute myself and it did not work. So
It's all good.
let's before we go any further, let's kind of recap what we've got here because there's so many interesting things happening. So we have a veteran who definitely gained some methods on killing better in the military, right? Which is Jeffrey Dahmer was a medic in the military before he started, and that was in the 80s. He's got a construction business, so he can move around and freely and do. Also, it's easier for him to dispose of bodies that way. He has the equipment to do it. John Wayne Gacy, picking victims at random. Richard Ramirez. But what's interesting here is you have all these correlations, which is why it's so hard to track. But on top of that, you have this added element of the killing kits, which I know we're going to get more into in a bit. But that is such an important detail and is also why he got away with it as long as he did. And again, when you have all these different modicums of serial killers from the past involved in what he's doing, you've got a ghost on your hands. Oh, and he lives in Alaska. This is absolutely an incredible set of circumstances that had to happen, and unfortunately did happen for Israel Keys to get away with this as long as he did. And it's crazy. Like it's truly this is what I find fascinating.
What I found fascinating working in the industry that I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to send you a ransom note. I'm going to request money, but I need you to go ahead and deposit it into a bank account. Like that bank account can't be traced. I mean, unless it's overseas, I just don't understand. He had such a perfect plan, right? For everything that he did.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that I just don't understand. I understand not wanting a drop-off location, right? It's easy to be have police involved and kind of sabotage the drop-off location, but go ahead and wire it to my bank account and, have the information. Now, unless he's already had somebody involved in it. So that they didn't get into, but he did have a history of robbing banks. And so the funnier part is if you ever want to see some funny interviews about stuff, Google his name and bank robberies and listen to his interviews on them interrogating him on the bank robberies. It's like he's smoking weed while in jail, and he's just getting a kick out of watching the video of himself robbing a bank. It's extremely weird. Anyway, we digress. The note said that Keening would be hurt if the directions weren't followed specifically or if the police got involved. A crude picture of a skull and crossbones was used as a signature. He planned the kidnapping of Keening, including the ransom demand, so that the detectives would be confused and he would have more time to leave the area. Even though Keening's family tried to follow the directions in the ransom note, they were not able to get her back. Then, on February 17th, 2012, money was taken from an ATM in Arizona using Keening's bank card. This was a break in the case because the ATM security camera actually caught Keening using using Keening's card. Investigators tracked the transfers to several states before deciding that Keyes was a likely suspect in Keening's disappearance. Later, on April 2nd, 2012, about 2 months after she was taken, the remains of her body was actually found in the frozen lake that we talked about earlier. Her body was found by a diver who was taking part in the search operation set up by her family. Her family and friends were still holding out hope that she would come back home safely when her body was actually found. It also gave important clues to the investigation and helped put together what happened before she was taken and killed. Let's go back a little. On March 13th, 2012, Keyes was caught by police in Lufkin, Texas, putting an end to his decade-long killing spree. When Keyes tried to take money out of the ATM in Texas, they were able to figure out where he was and caught him right away. After Keyes was caught, he was sent to Alaska to face charges for kidnapping and killing of Samantha Keening. And yes, you heard me right when I said that he killed a lot of people for a decade. Probably wondering, how did Justin come up with a decade when he only told us about one murder? Well, after Keyes was caught and sent to Alaska, he started to say he had done other bad things. He told detectives a story about his life as a serial killer over the course of several months. I want to just make sure that I'm very clear with this. So before he was able to give up any information to the police and do any of the interviews, his only one request was that it did not get out to the media because he did not want his daughter learning what an evildoer he was. So ultimately, at the end of the day, he was like, look, I will sing like a canary, but I don't want any of this getting out to the public because I don't want my daughter to understand what a monster I am. Basically, he told authorities that he had killed at least 11 people, but the real number of people he killed might never be known. During his confessions, Keyes talked in depth about his method of operation. He talked about how he used kill kits, picked victims at random, and how he worked hard to cover his tracks. He talked about several deaths, such as the killing of Bill and Lorraine Currier in Vermont in 2011, and the killing of an unnamed couple in Washington State in 2009. Before he said anything, he gave the police an ultimatum, like I said. I'll tell you everything you want to know. If you want, I'll tell you every little detail. I have a lot more to say. But there was a catch. He would only tell him everything if he promised not to tell the press. He did not want his daughter to read about the bad things he had done. So with that, we found out details on a double homicide. This unfortunately happened to be in regards to the Curriers, Bill and Lorraine Currier, to be exact. They were a married couple who lived in Essex, Vermont. When they went missing on June 8th, 2011, they were both 50 years old. The couple was well liked in their neighborhood and worked for a company called Essex Technology. The couple left their home on the evening of June 8th, 2011. Their car was in the garage and there were no signs that they had been fighting. A report was made to the police and the probe was started. Even though the area was looked for a long time, no sign of the couple was found for almost a year. He told the police that he chose the couple at random and was in the area for something else when he decided to break into their home. Kia said that he had held the couple down, took them somewhere else, and killed them there. He wouldn't say where he buried them, but he did say it was a rural part of Vermont. Keyes also said that he didn't know the Curriers before that, and he picked them because their house looked like it would be easy to break into. Even though police and the Curriers family have looked for their bodies for a long time, they have never been found. The family has set up a website to collect information and tips about the case, and they still hope that one day they'll be able to find their loved ones and bring them home. One of the scariest things that we've talked about is kill kits. TJ, I'm a fan of Dexter. I think because of the creative way that they built that series, right? But the one thing that always fascinated me with Dexter was his ability to cover his crimes,
Yes.
blend in, and then the fact that he had a kill kit, right?
Yes.
And so not a lot of serial killers have that and have that built into their MO. Kia's is actually one of them that actually did. So let me tell you exactly kind of what went into his kill kits and then what he actually did with it. So these kits were an important part of his plan. He actually carefully put them together and buried them in strategic places months or years before he actually used them. Typically, each kill kit had the following things in them: handcuffs, zip ties, or rope to keep people from moving, knives and other cutting tools for both killing and slicing people up. For more control or backup weapon, he used a gun, which was usually a .22 caliber pistol with a silencer, bullets for the gun, plastic bags or tarps to hold or throw away proof, gloves or other safety gear to keep leaving fingerprints or other traces, and then basically anything else he needed for cleaning supplies. So bleach, and then any other cleaning supplies that he felt would kind of erase his evidence on the crime scene. So how he would do it, he would actually often go to the place where he planned to commit a crime, look around, and hide the kill kit in a place where no one would find it. He would then go back to his normal life, which would last for weeks, months, or even years before he decided to attack. When he was ready to kill, he would go back to the area, get the kill kit, and choose a random person. This way, Kias could avoid taking anything with him that could be used to link him with the crimes while he was moving. He also made it hard for agents to figure out a clear timeline for his actions by leaving the kill kits in a place for periods of time. He didn't have receipts showing that, hey, I was in the local Piggly Wiggly getting garbage bags, right? So that's definitely different than some of our normal serial killers.
That's how Gacy got caught.
Yeah. The fact that Kias planned and thought ahead for his crimes shows in the kill kits. He was very careful and well-planned killer who took great care to stay hidden and cover his tracks. The fact that he used kill kits shows how cold and calculated he was as well. He was able to be patient and wait for the right time to strike, all the while keeping up a normal appearance in his daily life. His kill kits are a scary and unique part of how he kills, which makes him different from many other serial killers like we were talking about. They show a level of dedication and organization that is rarely seen in criminal investigations, and they give a chilling look into the mind of a man who had a dark, unquenchable desire to kill. As we keep looking into Kias' life and crimes, it's important to think about how carefully made these kill kits were and how they helped him do terrible things for so many years without being caught.
Justin, I do have some video here of one of his interrogations. It's about 4.5 minutes. 4 minutes, excuse me. If you're watching the video, you'll be able to see this was made by Top Notch Documentaries. If you're just listening to this, this audio you're about to hear is courtesy of Top Notch Documentaries, and I don't know what to expect out of this video because it's entitled "Not Like the Real Thing." So this already doesn't sound good, But here we go. Here's an interrogation of Israel Keys by the FBI.
I also noticed on some of on your computers and actually in some of the stuff in your vehicle that you have some different movies. Do you get ideas from movies, or is that you just like?
No ideas. Movies still my ideas. Should have got some of them copyrighted. Kind of pissed me off.
You did some of those first.
Yeah. There's some cheap, low budget slasher movie. Some guy made it. I don't know.
Been there, done that.
A couple of years ago, and I was kind of pissed off with that one because, as far as I know, nobody had thought of that, or I'd never read about it.
Which movie was that?
I don't remember what it was called. Some stupid
low budget
college kid movie. He was all proud of himself because he was using cable ties and all.
What do you do in the movie?
He strangled this girl with a cable tie. I thought of that right after cable ties were invented. Or at least those big ones.
The thick ones.
Huh?
The big thick ones?
Yeah.
Anything else from the movies?
Movies. Movies are like video games. They're a lot of fun, but they're not like the real thing.
I guess I was more curious as to more whether it was the movies that gave you ideas or whether anything you've done has kind of been your own thoughts. And
I can't think of any movies that I got. Well, there was a book I read years and years ago that gave me a lot of ideas, but I can't really blame that because I was already doing stuff when I read that book.
But it gave you ideas.
Yeah.
What book was that?
It's called Intensity by Dean Koontz. And that was the first book I had read that kind of talked about things from the other point of view. Like I read crime novels all the time, but it's always from the detective's point of view. It's never from the bad guy's point of view. And it always pissed me off that I could never find one from the bad guy's point of view. So I read that one. Yeah.
But you said you used to read crime books. So did you get ideas from that?
No, nothing specific. I don't think. No.
How about from studying Bundy and other people on things that they did that either got them caught or that you thought was a bad idea that you stopped doing or don't do or didn't because of that?
I got lots of those kind of ideas, like what not to do from books and movies and true crime TV. Yeah, there's no shortage of what not to do. If I had been following my own rules.
All right, so just from that little 4-minute clip, I know two things. He definitely idolized Ted Bundy. He mentioned it towards the end. And two, this man is a special breed of insane. Because not only is he talking about what he's doing in horrific detail, but he's also claiming weird things. Like I thought of strangling people with cable ties when they came out, when they were invented.
Just the big ones, the thick ones.
Just the big ones.
Yeah.
What? And the laughs, which you can tell they're uncomfortable laughs, but he's still laughing when he's in a murder interrogation.
I don't know if they're uncomfortable or if he just has no remorse. And for us that
Well, it's
actually would have emotion, it's uncomfortable to us, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I like kind of pick up when I talk about his interrogations. That's what I'm talking about. That is funny. Is he has no remorse whatsoever.
None.
He actually finds it comical. There's actually one interview that they have with him, and he's like, really cool that he's actually in jail. He's like, yeah, I worked out this morning. I read the paper, blah, blah, blah. Like it's a natural thing. Like you're in the jail and like you're working out and stuff. Like he's actually making it good that he's in prison. Like there's no remorse. There's no, hey, I'm paying for it. Now, ultimately, I think it gets to him. But ultimately,
oh yeah,
I think he's enjoying telling people of what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
I think he wants to be as famous as Bundy and everybody else. So I think that's where he's getting off. I think that's why he's laughing. He's enjoying what he's doing. It's uncomfortable for everybody else watching it, though.
Oh yeah.
So
all of that from 4 minutes.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, you've watched 4 minutes. I watched a whole week's worth of interviews with him, and
that's true.
I've lost a little sleep. I can say that. So now this case has a lot to teach law officers and people who look into crimes. His ability to avoid being caught for more than a decade shows how much investigation methods and tools actually need to improve. The fact that Samantha King's debit card was tracked through various states and eventually led to the arrest of Kayes shows how modern technology can actually help find and catch criminals. Also, a thorough look at Kia's ways of doing things, especially using his use of kill kits and his methodological planning, shows how important it is to look at crime scenes carefully and consider the chance of actually planned and organized crime. By looking at how Keyes did what he did, law enforcement can come up with better ways to find and catch criminals like him in the future. Investigators got some information about Keyes' crimes from what he told them, but there are still many questions they need to be answered, and some of his victims have yet to be found. This shows how important it is to have complete, up-to-date records of missing people and how we need to do better ways of identifying victims. By using advances in forensic science, like DNA analysis and methods for putting together a person's face, investigators may be able to find out who the victims were and bring closure to their families. In this case, it's important to keep trying to find his other victims so that justice is done and the full extent of what he did is known. So TJ, you're probably asking, he mentioned in the very beginning, this piece of crap actually died, right? And you're probably wondering what happened. Well, on December 2nd, 2012, the Anchorage Correctional Complex found him dead in his jail cell. He had slit his wrist with a homemade shank and strangled himself with a bed sheet, making sure that he would die.
Wow.
He wrote a 4-page note by hand, but it didn't say much about why he did what he did or how bad his crimes were. Instead, the note was a mix of random thoughts, poetry, and vague references to his life and criminal actions. When he killed himself, it was a shocking and quick end to a case that has shocked and fascinated the whole country. With his death, there were still a lot of questions about his life and actions. Law enforcement had to put together the pieces of the puzzle that was Israel Keyes by using the limited information he gave them during his confessions and the proof that they could get from the places where he had committed crimes. As we come to the end of our episode on Israel Keyes' life and crimes, it's important to think about what we can learn from this scary case. Even though Keyes was caught and told what he did, the full scope of his crimes may never be known. His death didn't answer a lot of questions and took away the chance for the families of his victims to get the justice for their loved ones. It's a stark warning that evil can hide in people who seem normal on the outside. His ability to act like everything was fine even though he was doing horrible things, shows how complicated people and how unpredictable criminal behavior can be. The case also shows how important it is to stay alert and keep improving investigative methods, technologies, so people who do such horrible things can be brought to justice. Now, he was different from many other serial killers because of how he did things and how well he planned and organized his crimes. His use of kill kits and his willingness to wait for the right time to strike show that he has a cold, calculated mind that is hard to understand. His story forces us to face the uncomfortable truth that people who are capable of such violence can live in our communities without being caught. I'm sure people who did business with him and lived right next door to him never knew they were doing business or lived next door to a killer.
Right.
Even though his actions have caused fear and horror, it's important to keep in mind that the families who have suffered because of his crimes are resilient and have been through a lot. Their dedication to getting justice and making sure their loved ones aren't forgotten is a powerful example to the human spirit and the ability to heal after unimaginable disasters. In order to understand Israel Kia's lives and crimes, it's also important to respect the hard work and dedication of the police officers and investigators who helped bring him to justice. Their hard work to put together the pieces of the puzzle of what Kia's did to make him pay for his crimes shows how much they care about public safety and justice. Together, it's our responsibility to continue seeking solutions and trying to understand more about what caused his descent into darkness as we move forward in order to honor the memory of those who suffered because of him. By looking at the lives of people like Kia's, we can learn a lot by the nature of evil and the kind of things that can make people do bad things. In the end, it's his story is a sobering lesson about how truly evil people can be and how it's important to stay alert in the face of that evil. We've talked about it many times. There are no more sacred safe havens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be on alert. Even though we may never know the full scope of his crimes, his arrest and confessions have given us a look into the mind of someone that we didn't have before. It's a very organized and smart killer. As we think about the strange story of Israel Keyes, let's also remember his victims and the brave people who helped bring him to justice. Let's also make a promise to learn more about the complicated nature of people and the challenges that lie ahead in the fight against crime.
What a story. This is I mean, all these stories are, what's the word I want? Horrifying comes to mind, but
they're sick and twisted.
Sure. But again, we rattled through some names here. Jerry Brudos would lure women in with photography, allegedly. That's what he said. Whether or not they had a choice in the photography is a whole nother discussion. Ted Bundy was a prominent member of the community, actually moved to Utah, became a member of the Mormon Church, became a prominent member of the Mormon Church, blended in. Everyone thought he was innocent until Florida essentially happened. John Wayne Gacy had a contractor business. He was the local chair for the Democratic committee, something or other. He's got a picture with Nancy Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
Was it? No, Jocelyn Carter. That's who it was. And he's in Mindhunter. He's the big guy, the big killer. Any other day, I would know his name. Edmund Kemper. He knew half the police force because he would go to bars and drink with them and talk about the crimes. These people blend in. That's why they get away with it for so long. That's what's horrifying about it. They're chameleons. The only example we've covered so far that didn't was Eileen Wuornos. And the only reason why she got away with it as long as she did was because it was so chaotic, there was no way to forecast it.
Right.
Israel Keyes, it's incredible because every aspect of the story that you told, from his upbringing to the end, had to do with it. Everything contributed to it, whether it be the strict in childhood. And now, granted, we don't even know all the details about what happened, or there could have been other things as well that we don't know about. And now, if he hasn't said it yet, we'll never know because he's gone. To the military training, the construction business, all of that ties in to what he ultimately became. And also why he blended in so well, because he has this diverse, well-rounded social base between the military, all the people you meet, and all the stationed in Egypt, all the people you meet, all the situations you're in, the conversations you take part in, and then owning a construction business. Same thing. You got to talk to clients, you got to talk to all kinds of people, government officials for permits. So it's the kill kits, though. That's another level, and I think that's what is scary about Kia's. Thank goodness no one has taken up after that, because the thought of a serial killer picking victims at random based solely off of a kill kit he wants to use buried somewhere, he knows exactly where it is, and whoever the closest person to it when he finds it is dead. That is terrifying. That's like DC Sniper terrifying. And thank goodness he's off the streets. You heard him say he was influenced by Bundy. You hope no one tries to take the altar of Kias, but you know somebody well, because that's just how the world works. Wow, this is the planning and the meticulous nature of everything is another level. And again, I cannot believe he was arrested in 2011, and I just now am hearing about it for the first time, because it was in Anchorage, Alaska.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember is he picked an occupation where he could travel, do odd jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And seamlessly blend in. So, I always wonder, like, is it people are born evil or do they develop? And I think this one, he was born evil. I mean, just some of the stuff that he did, and I get where some of his upbringing could have created it, but there are others that had the same upbringing. He was raised, he was one of 10. You don't have 9 other serial killers in that family.
Right.
Now I get it. Not all of them went to the military either, but that doesn't, everything that he chose led to what he was. And so that's where I kind of struggle with the whole nature and nurture,
Well, I think another worrying aspect of Kia's is when you add in no victimology, none, random, kill kits, shows pre-planning to an extreme level, body disposal, he's chopping up body parts and throwing them in the river or wherever the case is,
sexual assault. So
you have a violence factor to it that's sexual in nature. You have, again, even though with no victimology, but if you consider the kill kits, pre-planning to a painstaking level, and then you have body disposal. There's only one reason why a serial killer hides a body, because he knows what he did should not have been done, and he doesn't want anyone to find it, because now he has this urge to feed, and if somebody finds that body, it's going to be over. So, you didn't hear. I need to research more on this, which is another thing I'm going to do to better myself, is read more books. But I'm unsure, because some killers will show remorse in some weird way in their own head, but I don't know if I'm gonna guess chopping up bodies and throwing them in the river is not remorseful. So, but that means he was strictly doing it for self-preservation, and he didn't care about these victims. And all those things together, this is unheard of. There's a good chance he's the only one that fits all these different aspects to how and why he did what he did, and I think that's why it's fascinating. Again, I can't believe I just heard of him now for the first time. Great pick. You're raising the bar. I don't know if I can keep up with all these topics that you're doing. I'm like, here's a Netflix, which, by the way, I'm going to do another one, just so you know. But I don't know these people.
That is the goal. Hopefully our listeners don't either, and we're educating them on not just some of the well-known serial killers, but also the lesser-known evildoers. My next episode was actually suggested while I was in Branford, Florida, visiting friends that are our family. And basically they were telling me of a murder that happened here in Tampa, Florida, back in the early 2000s. And an ex-wife actually killed her husband. So we will delve into that episode for episode 14. Let's talk more about your episode. Episode 13, you said you're going to do another Netflix doc. What have you chosen?
So I've talked to you in the past about this, and one can only do, especially when I just did Evil Genius and The Keepers, pretty horrific things, and a lot of, unfortunately, in the case of The Keepers, a lot of bad things without a lot of good results, which weighs on you quite a bit. This story I'm going to do next is, I'm not going to say worse because I don't know how you judge that, but it's equally as bad. No one dies, but it's absolutely terrifying. Someone who uses fame to their advantage to get anything they want at any given time. It's the Netflix documentary is called A British Horror Story, the story of Jimmy Savile. And that will be the next one I'm covering next week. He is accused, he's passed away now, but he is accused of sexually molesting, assaulting, or raping over 400 women over the course of about 50 years in Great Britain. And the crime itself is terrible, but when I tell you how he got away with it for 50 years, it's even worse. So that's what I'm going to do next, is the British Horror Story, the story of Jimmy Savile.
Wow. Well, I'm excited. I think you did a really good episode on Tuesday, and your Netflix episodes have been pretty well.
Yep.
Just to leave you with another piece for episode 14, my evildoer jumped off the Skyway Bridge and lived to tell about it.
Wow.
Yes. So more to come.
Also, I want to clarify something too, because this will be my 5th Netflix documentary in a row. If you're listening to this and you think, well, that's lazy, he's just doing Netflix documentaries, what I'm really doing is I'm picking these so you can watch them. And as soon as you listen to our episode about it, you can have a conversation with us and we can discuss these things. That's really what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to promote conversation between us and you, the listener / viewer. So but between now and then, go ahead and watch it. Again, I would not watch it at work. I would do it at home, put the kids to bed or whatever. Don't let it be the last thing you watch before you go to bed, but watch it and then wait for next Saturday for the show to come out, and then we can discuss it after you listen to it. So that's what I'm trying to do.
And we definitely always welcome our listeners to jump into our DMs and discuss the episode. We love when Miss Amy jumps in and tells us about her thoughts on the episodes. Diane and Tiffany telling me what they enjoy about our episodes and what they suggest for future ones. So we are always looking for suggestions. We've got listeners in South Carolina, all over the place. And we even had a review from the UK. So
yes, fantastic.
We are always open and interested to hear what you want to hear us cover on Evolution of Evil.
By the way, whoever wrote the review from the UK, I better hear from you next week. This is in your neck of the woods.
All right. TJ, take us away.
Well, another horrible story in the books with a positive spin, I guess. Positive messaging at the beginning, how to better ourselves, and let's do it together. Let us know your progress. Next week, again, I'm covering the British horror story, Jimmy Savile. Next week might be a 2-part episode. A lot of information to cover. Until then, he's Justin Yent. I'm TJ Stevens. Grow some eyes in the back of your head. Don't trust anyone.
Stay alert.
And stay safe. And we will see you next week right here on the Evolution of Evil.
The views expressed on this podcast are ours alone and do not reflect the views of our employers.
Evolution of Evil.
I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep. That's when they would be strangled.
Do you have a boyfriend?
No.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Evil is not spurned. Evil is thought of as a spirit that needs help.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
Evolution